Well, hey, early childhood team, Pastor Brandon here, hoping that y'all had a great Christmas. And this lesson is the very last Sunday that we have this year. Oh my goodness, where did this year go? But all of that to say, we're going to be closing out the year teaching the kids about communion and about remembering Jesus and what Jesus did. So, in that, we're going to be teaching a lesson called Remember Me. So remember these, no pun intended. This has the information, the focus, and the focus is we take communion to remember what Jesus has done for us. The Bible lesson is the Last Supper in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 23 and 26. And then our verse that we're focusing on is 1 Corinthians 11:26, which says this: For every time you eat this bread and drink this cup, you are remembering the Lord's death until he comes again. Now, with this, another standalone lesson for those that were a part of the Christmas lesson, that was also standalone lesson. We'll start a new series in January. This one, because the verse is so long, we're just going to focus on the main point. So there is a main point which says, I will remember what Jesus did for me, and there are emotions that go with that. So make sure you look at this. This will be attached as well where you're finding this video. And then you have the class schedule as well. And on the class schedule, it talks about the hands-on and what to bring for the hands-on and just a breakdown. So just pay attention to that flow. So here's the idea is that no, we're not going to be taking communion with the kids, but the idea here is that we're going to show them. So in a moment, I'll talk to where you're going to pull out communion elements that we'll have for you. Unless you want to bring some in and you've got a certain way, or you've got a cool glass that you want to bring in that you put them in. So that I'll say this, I'm not saying anybody would do this, but don't bring any wine glasses in. I'm not saying anybody has those but I'm just saying. Um, anyways, so the idea here is that we're just going to we're trying to keep it gentle, clear, but age appropriate with the kids. So you want to communicate that with them. We want to work through that. Then the Bible story, like I said, and just look at my notes, is the Last Supper. So when you're sitting down with them and get them sitting on the dots and they're over in the area where you're going to be teaching this story, which should be where close to where your dots are, your TV, so you can utilize those visual elements. Like the Rad Kid Story Bible, or if you're using the pictures in the playlist, that use that. But there's the thoughts here to highlight. Jesus holds up the bread, and this is my body. These things are important, what I'm saying, because they come out when you're going to do the hands-on and you make the visual and the flip. Jesus lifts up the cup and he says, this is my blood. Jesus says, do this in memory of me. So the bread reminds us that Jesus gave us his body. The juice reminds us that Jesus gave up his blood. And communion helps us remember his great love for us. And then you get to the hands-on. This is the biggest part. This is the huge part. And this is why the Bible story, if you said those things and utilize the time as you were teaching to mention that, it's going to help you set this up, because you're going to have the communion elements at this point. So you'll have bread or crackers, whichever one we'll put together, and then some juice. So you're going to have that. So nobody's taking communion, but you're just going to be talking through this. And remember, the hands-on gives you the script and what to say. So today we're talking about communion. Say communion with me. Communion. All right. So that's what you want to do. Have you ever taken communion or seen people take communion? So let's talk about that for a moment. So it says on here, share a few memories of people doing special things for you. So you need to think about that ahead of time and what that actually means, so you have an example. Then in here, there's a part where it says, do you remember what the bread is for? Show the bread. So it's great. The more that we say this, repetition, reinforcement, the reason why if you saying those things that I said to say specifically in the Bible story, and again, it's not the end of the world if you don't, but it just helps you to set up this piece of actually going through when you're actually giving them the visual of what this looks like. So show them the bread. That's right. The bread is a reminder of Jesus's body. Then it talks about hold up the crackers or bread, whichever one we have, as you talk. Some people eat actual bread when they take communion, while others eat crackers or wafers. So we're just kind of teaching them. We're trying to get them this visual and this reference, so that as we build on this foundation as they get older, that they're not high school. They're before they're like oh man, that's the first time I've heard about communion. We want to teach them this. So as you go through it, that's just the visual on these pieces. So thank you for taking the time again to watch this video. Please reach out if you have any questions. Now, always feel free to bring things and be a part of taking this to the next level in your own way. So, just because we may be providing things, you have an opportunity to use your creativity in the way God has designed you to bring in elements that reinforce, that support, that go with the teaching of this. So, if you have any questions, please reach out, and I'm praying for you as you pray through and think about this weekend's lesson.